Government has a record of undermining conservation.
Eugenie Sage.
Thank you. Pleased to take a short call on the Conservation Natural Heritage Protection Bill, and I congratulate Jackie Dean for bringing this bill to the House because it increases and implements a much more consistent approach to penalties for offences which are committed under the Conservation Act, National Parks, Reserves, Wildlife and Wild Animal Control Acts. And one of the areas where it does this, obviously, is increasing the penalties for offences under this conservation legislation for the smuggling of native wildlife. And that's why the Green Party will be supporting the bill, because the existing penalties have not increased for some time and they are out of step with the prices that are being paid internationally for wildlife which are smuggled out of Aotearoa and then sold internationally. And there have been a range of court cases where it's quite clear that the existing penalties of up to a $100,000 fine and 6 months in jail are not providing a deterrent. So we're pleased that the bill will increase the offending penalties where it's been done by individuals for commercial purposes or by a company, that's a higher penalty than for offending by an individual. But I'm also somewhat bemused by this bill because it's a members' bill. But in September, the Minister of Conservation said that the government would be introducing the Wildlife Smuggling Deterrence Amendment Bill later this year. And the object of that bill was to increase the maximum penalties for smuggling wildlife such as tuatara, parrots and geckos. So yes, Mr Bridges, what is going on here? Because the Minister, when she announced the intention to introduce that government bill, said that the penalties would be increased to up to 5 years imprisonment and or a $300,000 fine. So would be interested in the comments from the member Jackie Dean in reply about what happens when the government does introduce the bill that has been promised. How does this bill improve on what the government and cabinet had already agreed to, and is it potentially duplicating that? Nevertheless, we welcome the bill and we will be voting for it. But as other speakers on the opposition benches have highlighted, this is a good bill, but the government is not investing adequately in conservation. We've seen a $54 million cut to the department's budget, and in the annual report of the department released in September, it showed that there were 114 fewer frontline staff in 2011-12 than in 2009-10, and a total of 181 fewer permanent staff. Now, Mr Speaker, that reduction in frontline staff gives the lie to the government's promises and claims that its slashing of public sector budgets is not reducing people on the front line. And of course, it is the people on the front line, the Department of Conservation staff who are out maintaining tracks and huts, who are controlling wildings and willows, doing predator control, providing advice to hunters, trampers and international visitors, that are the front line against smuggling, because it's often them and members of the public who are alert to suspicious activities, people going and visiting the quite confined sites and habitats where species like jewel gecko are found, and then alerting the wildlife enforcement group and warranted officers who can step in and take action. So I pay, on behalf of the Green Party, enormous tribute to those frontline Department of Conservation staff, particularly in area officers who are being threatened by the substantial second round of restructuring, which means that they are all going to have to apply for their jobs. And it was a senior investigator in the Wildlife Enforcement Group who described wildlife smugglers as, and I quote, greedy people without any consideration for animals. And that's certainly true with these people who are snatching species like the beautiful jewelled gecko from their habitat, stuffing them in small plastic containers and taking them overseas. And it's these lizard fauna, particularly distinctive species like the jewel gecko, which have been targeted because of their bright green colouring and that very unusual diamond pattern. And that species, there are only about 5,000 individuals left. They're now confined to small areas of Otago and Canterbury, particularly on the peninsulas. Habitat loss, predation has affected them, and poaching is a huge impact and has caused several of the populations to crash. So the Green Party supports this bill in increasing the penalties for those individuals who are taking these gecko out of their habitat.
The Honourable Nick Smith.
Mr. Speaker, I think